We just did match day yesterday. So she said they vet people to see if they're good employers. Don't want to brag. All right, so this is 10 minutes, so we'll go through it quickly. But first, the name of the presentation is Building a Mind. As she mentioned, I'm the co-founder CTO of Delphi. I've been working on this for 3 years now. And I want to start off with a bold statement. So why in the future should you have a static profile? Having a static profile makes no sense. People come to your profile, they can ask questions, they don't know what your voice sounds like, they don't know how you think or what you know. People already use Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all these profiles, but they're lossy. Wouldn't it make sense to have a profile that could interact on your behalf? So what is Delphi? Delphi is your always-on living. Oh, is it not progressing? Oh, it's a little delayed. Okay. Delphi is your always-on living profile. So the problem is the things that make you valuable, your judgment, your perspective, your gut, don't show up when you're not in the room. And so the ramifications of this are wasted time repeating yourself, ghosting people, missing out on opportunities, and capped impact. This is my Delphi profile. So you can go to delphi.ai/sam and you can see my profile. And I've trained it on all of my Twitter, podcasts I've done, posts. I'll throw this talk in there when I get the recording, and some internal documents from Delphi. And so people can go to it and they can ask questions about what it's like to work at Delphi, what I care about in the interview process, the expectations for the engineers on the team. And this has been a great tool because I can put it in meeting invites and people can ask questions. And I've seen a lot of people actually say, I'm going to meet with you today. Tell me about yourself and about the company. But how do you actually create your living profile? So this is Studio. This is kind of hard to find pictures of online unless you go through onboarding and actually use the product. But this is what you see when you first come into Studio to make your digital mind. And you have the Mind Score, which we just released last week, that tells you how trained or skilled your mind is. And so mine is an expert, 2,000 points. That's only okay. I don't have a ton of trained data. I'm working on training it right now. But it can go all the way up to legendary, immortal, as you continue to train it. And this is an indicator of how high quality your mind is. So it actually improves with the breadth and depth of the data that you put in. And there's also a side panel of all the different things you can do. You can choose different groups. So maybe there's certain things that are internal to Delphi. I create a group for just the people on the team. And then there's a public access group where there's data that's different for everyone on the internet to access. So a bunch of different things you can do with your Delphi. But who is using this? You're sitting here, you're like, oh, that sounds pretty good. But is this product actually out there? Who's trying it out? There's a couple of people that you may have heard of. Lenny Rachitsky is one of the people who is a happy user of Delphi. If you go to lennybot.com, you can talk to his Delphi. He's trained on all of his Substack and podcasts. And it's actually one of my favorites because a lot of times I'm looking for specific advice about, what do CTOs think about for handling tech debt? That was a big thing that we had to deal with this summer because after 2 years of not having a staging environment, we were like, well, we need to review people's PRs. And another one is Arnold Schwarzenegger. He has it in his weightlifting community. People ask him questions and get advice from him. And there's thousands more people who are using it, but those are two that I thought the people here would know. So right now, thousands of Delphi profiles, millions of interactions a month, and we are releasing the free tier soon. So the people who are here in this room, if you go to delphi.ai/pricing, you can sign up and you can get on the free tier waitlist to create your living profile soon. Follow-up question to this is, how does it work? We got started in November of 2022, and in 2023, we put out what was the first mind architecture for Delphi. And at the time, it was a state-of-the-art conversational system. This is a whimsical that I made, like a flow chart of all the different decisions we made. We were like, okay, what are the different components that have to do with the mind, core traits, personality, the memories, and how are they going to come together to go into the prompt, all these different things. And we pushed what was possible with conversational systems fairly far. And this got us to the Series A last year. But we wanted to do even better. And something earlier this year was very top of mind for me. Does anyone know who this is? I feel like I heard someone say it. Nope. This is Richard Sutton. And he has one essay online that you can go read that is becoming more and more important. And you may even know the name of this without knowing who he is. The Bitter Lesson. Have people heard about this? Even if you don't know what this is, you maybe, now that I'm talking about it, will see it on Twitter, people talking about it. So the biggest lesson that can be read from 70 years of AI research, is the first line of the bitter lesson, is that general methods that leverage computation are ultimately the most effective and by a large margin. And so every time that anyone in AI ML has set out to solve things like playing chess, doing Go, beating people with Dota 2, they start off by saying, all right, well, how do the grandmasters play chess? Or how do the best players at Go play chess? And we try to learn from them, and we try to imbue the system with our judgment about what it means to be the best at this as a human. But every single time that that's happened, if we just throw computation at it and let an ML system figure it out, the results are always better. And so I showed you that complex graph where we're like, oh, what are the memories and the personality and all, what does it mean to be a human? Instead, how can we jump and be ahead of the trend that has come up every single time someone has tried to do something novel in AI ML? We made two major changes. So the first one, new architecture. This is what everyone's doing these days. But actually, the first thing we did is we thought about what is the best way to represent knowledge, and how can we empower a system to take what's in people's content and then extract the most information out of it. So this is a visualization of a knowledge graph that we created using Delphi. And so now all of the new Delphis that you create are powered by a knowledge graph, and so the data representation changed. And then we actually did use an agent. And one of the things so I try to make this talk have a couple things in it that would be actionable for people, even if you don't care about Delphi, you leave here and you think about this. One of them is the bitter lesson. And then the next one is that the architecture that people are starting to use more and more, all these tools that you're using, Claude Code, Notion AI, the Cursor agent, whatever, is starting to have an agent that has tools and a very strong system prompt, and you basically let it figure it out. You want to give the agent all of the tools that it needs to be able to do whatever the task is, or even understand how it can do the task, and then let it do it. And so that is how we want to avoid the bitter lesson and not try to imbue what we think about how to represent a mind into the system, combined with one of the tools being a knowledge graph. So this is the actual new design, which I blacked out a little bit, but uses a bunch of these principles that I was just discussing. So how do we measure success? We said, okay, we want to change the architecture, we want to use a knowledge graph, that sounds great, okay, fantastic. And we want to use an agent that has tools that you can figure out how to respond conversationally in the moment. We're figuring it out. Another thing that people don't really know how to do generally is evaluate personas. Even at OpenAI Dev Day yesterday, my lead AI engineer who's here, Sarosh, hopefully you guys will find him and talk to him, he's brilliant, went to a talk that someone gave about personas and how to evaluate them at OpenAI, and they were like, nobody really knows. And so a benefit of agentic systems is that they can do more, and so the ceiling is higher for the quality of the outputs, but because you are not setting a strict guardrails and it can make a ton of decisions itself, the floor is also lower. And so one of the main things we're trying to do right now is dial in evals. And for what Delphi is doing, it is even more difficult because traditional evals don't cut it. Because you have a question that's like, what does it mean to represent somebody? That's a very general question, but the success metric is per person. And so what does it mean to represent this person? And this is another thing that I'm hoping to talk to you now about, and then later you'll be like, I remember this guy Sam talked about it, is evals per person. So another thing that is going to come after right now, everyone's talking about evals, they're talking about how do we make sure that the models do the right thing, evals, remote, whatever. How do we make sure that a specific user is having a good experience with whatever your product is? So imagine in a year from now, OpenAI wants to say, is this ChatGPT instance good for this person? The success criteria for that is way different. It's a different question than, is GPT-5 good at this thing? And so that's one of the things that we're working hard on right now, is trying to get ahead of that problem, because what does it mean to have a good living profile for a specific person is different than, have we made our general Delphi agent good at something? So what gets measured gets improved. Evals are actually kind of the moat. It's the really, if you can quantify the subjective, you've done 75% of the hard part, because then you have a system that you can then know how, if you're making changes, is it getting better or worse? And as I mentioned, waitlist free tier available. So if you want to be a part of the experiment and help us learn, sign up, do it. And if you have a good piece of feedback, then email it to me. Evals are difficult. And the last thing I want to plug is that we just released the first 2 episodes, and another one's coming out this Thursday, of the the first interactive podcast. So we have been bringing people from across the tech community into our library and our office, and we're interviewing them, and then we're training their Delphi, and then we're putting it with the podcast, and you can ask them questions. And we did the first one with Keith Raboy, our seed investor, and the last one with Rulof, the steward of Sequoia. And it's a great form factor to test out Delphi and also listen to an interesting podcast. And we just raised our Series A from Sequoia and a bunch of these great people. Oops, Q&A. That's obviously one of the most important things that we have to think about and care about, because people are putting their name and likeness into the platform. And literally what we were doing before we came here was we're trying to onboard the first 200 people off the free tier waitlist tomorrow. So we want to make sure that it never hallucinates. And so we are running through an eval adversarial attack set to try and get it to hallucinate. And so creating eval sets, and then also just including basically like a reflection step in the flow of being like, here's the data you have access to, here's the style and how we think you should respond. Make sure that it's going to say things in line with what the person says. And obviously it's not perfect, but I think we've been able to achieve a very high rate of success with avoiding hallucinations. So the question was, do we do real-time fine-tuning? How do we constantly update the knowledge graph of the person? We actually do no fine-tuning. And so that's another thing that I want people to come away from this with. Fine-tuning is a bad idea almost all the time, unless you have a very specific use case that you need to repeat a lot and you want to save tokens, and ideally you want to use an open source model you can put on Fireworks or something and then have fixed compute costs, then you want to fine-tune. And it can also be much faster on smaller models. But if you are thinking that I'm going to improve the performance of GPT-5, or sorry, I don't even know, whatever model, the smartest model that allows fine-tuning, by doing fine-tuning, that's a bad idea, because the new model will just come out and it's usually better. And so we don't do fine-tuning, and that allows us to be nimble with whatever data gets put in. We can just actively update the knowledge base.
Okay, cool. Hi everyone, I am Ray. I'm one of the founding engineer at Toma. And yeah, I would love to share you guys about what I do. Let's talk more about real-time interaction with AI. So a little bit about me. This is me. I love climbing. I squat a lot for fun. Love skiing. And yeah, love drinking coffee every day. My favorite drink is just an espresso shot with lactose-free milk. And you guys should try that. Yeah, but anyway, so previously I studied, I'm from SoCal. I studied computer science in UCLA, and I interned at a couple of big company before. And the past few years, I was a product manager at Microsoft, and yeah, and now I am one of the founding engineer at Toma. We are a Series A startup led by A16Z. And just in this year, we actually 6x our revenue since January, so we're doing pretty well for now. Yeah. Anyway, just kidding. Yeah. So what do we do, right? We basically build AI agents for automotive dealerships, and I will go into more about what exactly that is. Yeah. So why automotive industry? Well, there's a lot of money in this industry. It's actually a $2 trillion industry, and there's hundreds of millions of calls each year. As you can see, like there's around like 200 sales calls each year and more than 270 million service calls. So there's a lot of calls, and actually a lot of calls are being missed, and there's a lot of missed opportunity because of that. So so we see a gap, and Toma is here to fill it by answering those unanswered calls with AI. So a little bit behind the scenes. So many calls. Toma is our direct customer is the dealership. How do we handle millions of calls every single day? Well, I will give a little bit overview on how voice AI work as a whole. So this is like a traditional foundation model. So first, when someone calls in and say, "Oh, I want to book an appointment for my Toyota." I'm not sure if anyone owns a car here, but after you call, we convert the speech to text using different speech to text models. And after that, we convert the text, we shove it into the LLM, and we provide some function called some tools. For example, we can update our DB, we can call other external APIs to do whatever we want, and we get some response back. And then afterward, those response get turned back into speech through text to speech. So what are some of the text? There's so many speech-to-text model on the market. We actually have we use on-prem models that we host, and some of the consideration that we do is the latency, the accuracy, the partial transcription feature, which I will talk about more on why we need to use that, and just the general reliability. So let's say if the speech-to-text model fail, our model actually, the whole pipeline will stall because we don't get any input into the LLM. So that creates a really bad customer experience. On the LLMs, and there's also a lot of models like Gemini, OpenAI, so many things. So some of the things we consider is, I guess, first time to first token, or TTFT, and that is a part of latency, but we really do care how fast LLM responds, because the amount of time the customer waits on the call, that's directly corresponding to that. Second, we really care about how accurate the function calling is. Imagine someone calls and they're like, "Oh, can I book an oil change for my car?" Imagine the LLM say, "Oh, I'm booking it right now," but it actually doesn't call the function properly. That creates really bad experience for both the end customer, but also for the dealership who's missing this appointment. And yeah, and of course, latency and reliability is important as well. Lastly, the text-to-speech side, there's also a lot of models available. We actually customize each model depending on what the customer wants, so they can choose which one they like the most. Some of the consideration, in this case, voice quality is actually really important, especially for outbound case. Imagine you get a call about a reminder or for about a sale for a vehicle. In this case, you don't want a very robotic "Oh, I have a car available" or something like that. You want something that is very human-like. So in this case, the quality becomes a lot more important. And yeah, of course, latency and reliability are also important as well. And lastly, for those in the voice AI space, there's a lot of speech-to-speech models that is coming up, and we're always looking forward to it. And OpenAI has their real-time, GPT real-time, that we try to use, but because of some of the consideration, we haven't switched it yet. But we're super excited as new tech comes about. We're super excited to embrace those technology as well. Yeah, so we handle so many millions of calls. How do we reduce the latency, right? When you call a bot, you don't want to keep waiting as they try to book an appointment. So how do we actually make it faster? Some of the technical design choices we chose is first choosing the runtime between Bun and Node, and we end up going with Bun just because of the pure speed it has. For example, when audio processing, we did a benchmark a few months back, and it's actually more than twice as fast. Also, we're not sponsored by Bun in any way, and there's a lot of bugs, so when bugs comes around, don't ask me anything. But the WebSocket performance is also a lot higher, and cold starts mean when we start a server, it takes 1/3 amount of time, so we're able to scale it a lot more reactively as well. Second, greedy action calling. So imagine a customer say, book an appointment. When we hear book appoint, we can just assume that the customer wants to call book appointment action. So that's why we use partial transcription. We basically use partial transcription and call action as fast as possible. But that causes duplicate tool calls, which we solve by having a really robust action taker that can handle duplicate call and dedupe it. So for example, when you say book appoint, we'll call the action, and after we get the whole transcription book appointments, we are actually calling the same function. So action taker will actually just use the first result rather than calling it again. And in this way, we are very greedy in terms of how we call action. And some of the action takes, because it's external API, it takes a long time. We just want to provide the fastest experience for the end customer who is calling. Lastly, the audio worker threads. So since we're using Bun and Node, they're single-threaded processes, and we have a lot of CPU-intensive work, such as manipulating audio. So for example, if we want to make the audio making it less dim at the end, just making it sound a little bit more real, or sometimes we add background noise like a cafe in the back or auto shop voice in the back, just to make it more realistic. We can do that, but that requires a lot of CPU work. So we actually use we have audio worker threads that we spun out per call, and we use shared array buffer, which is kind of interesting if you want to search it up, and we use that. So there's no heap duplication as all the memory are being shared. So that makes it a lot faster, and we save a lot of memory as a result. But there's cons. There's a lot more memory leaks and corruption. So yeah, and debugging is also harder, but we are doing it for the end customer. So yeah, sorry. Yeah, so wait. Oh, so I'm going to summarize all my learnings. So what I learned is customers first. Always build depend on the customer needs, not something that is cool or what I think is oh, that's the coolest tech, I should build this. It's always customer needs first. As a very small startup, we try to be more proactive in the kind of problems that we're solving rather than reactive to the tickets that we get. And that's always an ongoing progress. And as we got more and more people in the engineering team, this becomes better and better. And for personally, I just really embrace change. From a technical point of view, new models, new tools, or new system comes in, I try to embrace it as much as I can. And yeah, I think it's also a great mindset personally as well, probably. And yeah, I think people really matters. We're just an engineering size of 5. So I think the people you work with really matters in such a small team. And especially when there's conflict that arise, everyone said collaborating is always the best way, but sometimes compromise and you have to accommodate or even compete with some of your peer. But those are necessary sometimes. But I think the worst is avoiding the problem, especially in the more more hierarchy structure. I think it's possible because of the power differences. So I try to avoid avoiding as much as possible. Yeah, and lastly, just have fun. I think we're all here due to different reasons. Some of us just want to, get rich, get money. Some of us just want to grow in to grow our career. Some of us are kind of interested in technically on the kind of problem we're solving. And lastly, we just want to, work with kind and smart people. And yeah, so I think in the end, life is pretty silly, and I hope everyone have fun. So, yeah. So this is about, so when the customer changes their thoughts, so there's 2 cases. One is they change their arguments. They say, I want to book an appointment for my Toyota Corolla 2022, but it's actually 2020. So when the argument change, our action taker recognize that argument change. So we would disregard the past code and use the newest one, right? I mean, it will be slower, but because they change their mind, we will do the second one. Second case is it's actually a new function. They say, instead of booking appointments, I want to actually just ask about vehicle information, something like that. Then in that case, we will just invalidate the first action as a whole. So basically same thing, but in both cases, we just take the second one. It will be a little bit slower, but it will be accurate. Yeah. Yes.
Wait, how do you exactly kind of integrate Toma to all these kind of dealerships? Is it something like a chat base? Is this a number you can just simply call?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you call, let's say, Toyota customer service, you get a video?
Yeah, exactly. So so our direct customer is the dealership. So they will pay us to connect with their phone line. So when you call their service department, it would directly link to. So we have our server will directly pick up the call through Twilio, and I can talk to you about how Twilio is another mess. Or it's good. Great job, Twilio. It's great, but with some issue, but we solve it. But yeah, so through Twilio, we answer the call directly. So some cases are just direct service department. We also provide IVRs, so those annoying click 1 to do XYZ. We also provide that functionality as well. Yeah, so something random.
Yeah, so hey everyone, my name's Nathan. I don't know what's going on with it. Oh, there it is. Okay. Hey, I'm Nathan. I work on a team at OpenAI called People Innovation Labs. So we essentially help the entire company do their best work. And we enable everyone in the company to do their best work. And I'm excited to share how we built Open House, which is OpenAI's company-wide intranet. And so it's a single home for information, connection, community, and it's powered end-to-end by our own AI, our own APIs. So I'm going to cover what Open House is, how we built it, why it's working, and some lessons any internal builder can use. So what is Open House? We built 3 products to manage OpenAI's intranet project. So first, we built a conversational AI, a conversational layer. So this is bringing in a UX familiarized to all by ChatGPT. So you can just simply ask a question to Open House on the site and get an answer. So this just gives you answers related to anything related to employee life at OpenAI, and this is kind of how we started our process. We wanted to focus on the problems that people had, the questions people had. For example, where do I park when I visit the SF office? Or tell me who has worked on safety systems for the past 3 years. I want to understand how we think about a new product surface area. Or when's the deadline to change my benefit election? So these are all examples of things that employees could ask. And then we anchored our data systems in an AI native CMS. So this just keeps information accurate and searchable. So teams rely on Open House to collaborate on key employee policies, and Open House helps expose them to employees. So whether it's legal, HR, procurement, finance, comms, they can create content directly within Open House and curate their spaces, and they can trust that Open House chat will direct employees to the right information, as long as they keep their answers up to date. So getting that flywheel going. Finally, Open House is a company-wide intranet with rich employee profiles. So just all the fun stuff. It's built with our design language and a level of polish and care that makes it feel built by and for OpenAI. So we've integrated all of our emojis, all of our froges. I have some stickers if you want them later. Easter eggs, Go links, badges, and our whole culture. And so by fusing these pieces, we reduce friction for both employees looking for company-wide information, as well as employee-facing teams looking to communicate key information and guidelines. So our conversational AI improves the more that folks keep the data in our CMS up to date, the more folks interact with our social features, the more chat can understand about employees and how to connect the growing community at OpenAI. And by folks contributing to the knowledge base of Open House, it improves the product for everyone. So it just keeps information easy to find at work. So this just allows us to ask whatever questions we want about life at OpenAI and address them. So indulge me in a little joke here, right? We got the conversational layer, the AI native CMS, and the company-wide intranet with employee profiles. These are not 3 separate products. This is one product. And it's built all on top of our APIs. So I'm just going to walk you through a demo and show you how it works. There's a giant search bar, walks through somebody type in, like, tell me how I visit the New York City office. Hit enter. It goes through a standard ChatGPT-like flow where it starts looking through all of our resources, Notion, Google Drive, and things in our custom CMS. It'll pull all the answers. It'll give them custom context based on the information in the sources as well as who they are. So it knows that, hey, like if I'm a contractor, if I'm a full-time employee, like whatever my context is, it knows how to pull that to find the right information, gives the list. Then it will also have a list of resources on the side as well as people to reach out to. So these are all things that are connected through our CMS. We can find and enrich all this information when people make the search to these chats. And as people update information in the resources, within 1 minute, that information immediately becomes available within chat. And that allows us to drive accurate answers to questions and have people who edit important information feel like they know exactly that their answers are, the things that they're trying to answer are going to get answered. So that's a bit about the demo. 75% of folks at OpenAI use Open House every week. It's built around good data, designed around real questions. It's easy to use, and it's solved an internal pain point quite well. So I just want to elaborate on specific lessons that anyone building any AI-powered experiences can take away. First, we viewed Open House as a product from the start. So we built features like announcements, company-wide video playback, transcriptions, and all of these pieces are native pieces that can get embedded directly into the conversational AI, into the way that employees can search for information. So it brings value not only in its atomic value, but also through the entire chat experience. We built shareable chat links and made open house responses available in employee Slack channels to prove its value. So employees, you may not know this like weird part about OpenAI culture, but basically like everything is in Slack. Like there are no emails. There's like nobody reads their emails. Like everybody's just on Slack. So we basically brought it into a lot of specific channels. Like I have a question where somebody can just ask whatever question comes to their mind. And Open House will see if it's capable of answering the question and like go through like a system thought there and then try to answer the question if it knows that it can try to prove value. So in that case, it'll direct the person to Open House to help them follow up with the question. If somebody asks a chat and they share it, then you can remix it. You can just go into it, ask another question following up on the exact thread that the person had, and then you can start asking questions that are in your context. So these are things that just provided value very quickly. We built light dark mode. We used OpenAI design language from the start as a conscious choice to embed our product into daily life. And so these things drove fast early adoption. And we embraced many ways to retrieve good answers for employees. So we recognize that certain questions are going to be hard to answer through single embedding search, like who started the same day as me. So we built SQL tools that our model can access to find employee information. So by allowing the model to combine different tool responses, we can answer very complex questions, and the model is free to use whatever tools it needs to use. Goes back to the bitter lesson thoughts earlier. But just allowing the model to decide what it wants to do to answer complex questions like, who previously worked on health applications at Google around 2017? These types of questions that recruiters might find super useful, or that folks at the company who are just looking to connect with people they used to work with, or people that might have context to something very specific. They can try to ask these questions about people in Open House, and it will be able to pull information about things that people put in their profile, but also things that are just in our database, like related to things that we've synced from our Workday instance, so we'll be able to find that information. And so our chat and our intranet is only as good as the data within it. So by proving that Open House can allow employees to self-serve and find the answers to frequently asked questions, by employee-facing teams, we encourage these teams to keep their information up to date, and this improved the chat significantly. So the flywheel kind of brings Open House out of the demo territory and keeps it perennially useful. So there's all kinds of, there's updates to our knowledge. There's things happening at OpenAI all the time, new announcements, new internal things that are going on, things that we want to know, things that we're sharing to everyone. And in a company as dynamic as OpenAI, it just keeps it perennially useful. We don't have to monitor or keep track of updates that internal teams are doing, so we're able to manage all of that. And so the best part of these takeaways is that Open House is built on no proprietary software. So we do no fine-tuning. That was something that we were just talking about. And we use the Agents SDK. We use the Responses API. We use our own vector store. So we're simply using our APIs. So that means that anyone can just take these lessons and build them straight into their products, or build better HR software or internal tooling for their company. So that's just a little bit about what we did. But we build innovative features by and for our culture, and we lead the way on what it means to use our APIs and our products to make a real difference for our employees. And in turn, we lay the blueprints for how to deploy our technology to benefit all of humanity. And this demo was this demo basically was the onboarding for Open House. So the way that it goes is that it starts asking you about who you are, what you do at OpenAI, and what your interests are, and it just asks that conversationally. It embeds all that information, puts it straight into your profile. So it's able to extract all the key details, and so you feel like you naturally flow into the website, and you naturally flow as a person into this community that is OpenAI. So yeah, thanks. Happy to take any questions. Let's start with a standing man. Yeah, so it's a good question. So we have a kind of a separate research product that's called like Go Ask at OpenAI, and it's basically like it was kind of part of a lot of our efforts to build codecs and distribute that. So it's trained on our repo and can answer questions. And of course, there's a lot of complexity with things going on within Open House and within like a code search engine like you're talking about that have to do with permissions, answering technical questions, and that requires like a different type of model intelligence that basically the OpenAI research team is continuing to tinker on. So those are kind of like two separate spaces. Yeah, Open House has a defined set of connectors, so it's only able to access things in Google Drive, Notion, and what's available in the Open House CMS. And all of the documents it has access to are things that are available to broad company-wide information. So there's nothing in Open House that is not like available to the entire company, especially full-time employees. And on top of that, Open House does a lot of work to filter out deprecated documents and make sure that there isn't stale data, because that's kind of one of the larger issues with people also just going in the company, just asking ChatGPT with context connectors and saying like, hey, I got like Google Drive, SharePoint, like all this random stuff. Like, let me connect it all up. We don't use SharePoint, but it's just like an example. But like, so we connect it all up, but then it can answer questions. I was just working on a feature for Open House and recruiting, and I was asking a question about like, hey, like what's going on with like this like technical detail in like Workday or something like that, and it was basically just answering it like referencing my own tech spec, and I was like, this is useless because like I don't want it to use my own tech spec. I want it to know like something that is more general throughout the company. So there are basically different times and spaces to use different tools, and people kind of get used to how to make that work. Yes.